welcome in a man that some might call the Steve Spurrier of fantasy analysts, a fantasy football and NFL analyst for CBS Sports, CBS Fantasy Sports, and CBS Sports HQ. This former Gator got his start in the papers, but now has been writing about fantasy sports since 2006. You can find this man on the Fantasy Football Today podcast or in the winner's circle, taking home fantasy trophies from all sports. The father of not just 3 boys, but about to father the doc when schooling him in some fantasy knowledge today. We are talking with the Jamey Eisenberg. Jamey, the girls love you, man. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's a hell of an intro.
Just for you, man. First, I thought it was interesting when I was reading up a little bit of a bio about you, and you said that on CBS that there are 3 guys that kind of helped shape the influence for how you talk about football, and that being Steve Spurrier, Don Shula, and and Jimmy Johnson. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was kind of interesting, and you can help tell me if I'm stretching this too far, okay? So I figured Steve Spurrier with his resume has so many accomplishments. Same with you. You have a great accomplished resume. You have the Don Shula in you because you have that my way or the highway approach, which I feel like you kind of are more firm with your takes than any of the other guys on the CBS Fantasy Football Today show, but you're also flexible enough to change them. So you have that Don Shula in you, and then you're a winner because he won 2 times. He was 2-time Super Bowl champ, and then you also win your league. So I felt like that you kind of encompassed all 3 of your guys, no?
I mean, I think based on the intro and that description, I'm going to have to hire you as my agent. That's a hell of a way to set me up. I'll come on your show whenever you want based on those superlatives. So just to give you a quick background. So I went to the University of Florida, as you alluded to. When I was there, Steve Spurrier was the coach. So I got a chance to cover him as part of the school paper. So, to learn at the foot of one of the best offensive minds in football, college, a little bit of pro, but mostly at the college level. I grew up a Dolphins fan. I covered the Dolphins. So Don Shula was the guy that I, studied as a kid and, watched how he adapted to I'm dating myself a little bit, but I'm not this old. But obviously he was a run-first defensive coach. At the start of his Dolphins tenure with what the Dolphins looked like in those 70s teams. And then he got one of the best quarterbacks ever, and he adapted his teams and his offenses to reflect what Dan Marino did. So, and then when I was covering the team, was part of my newspaper days, was the Jimmy Johnson tenure into the Dave Wanstead era as well, and the 58 coaches that have come since then. But Jimmy Johnson was certainly an interesting character for sure. So three very well-respected, highly successful coaches, and whether watching or being around them has been a benefit, I think, to how I've approached my football career per se.
And it's interesting because, again, talking about how you've been a fan of the Dolphins, I know you still live in Florida doing the CBS shows and stuff down there. I feel like you also do a really good job of not kind of being a homer when you're on your broadcast.
I'm not a fan at all. I'm not a fan at all. So growing up, and this is probably the toughest thing that I ever had to do. So I grew up diehard Dolphins fan, love Dan Marino. If you say you idolize a player, I idolize a player. My first year covering the team was 1999, was his final season. And so first time going in the locker room, being at a press conference, standing a few feet from him, asking him questions myself, and trying to reel in the fandom. The one thing that I think I was blessed with at the school paper that I worked for at the University of Florida is called The Alligator. They stripped us of being a fan. They beat that into us. If you're going to work here and cover the Gators, you can't be a Gators homer. And so I quickly lost my love for the Dolphins, which I have yet to gain back. And as you referenced, I have 3 kids. The oldest is 8. The middle one is 6, and the youngest is 2. The 2 older ones are starting to get into sports more and more. And whatever teams I think they gravitate toward is the ones that I'll probably gravitate toward. But to watch the football game objectively after hanging on every Fuad Revez field goal and Pete Stoyanovich kick, those days are hard to remember because I just don't have that rooting interest anymore.
It is very interesting because I feel like, does that natural instinct not kick in for any team you watch, or is it more you're just kind of suited to, hey, I have these guys in fantasy, I have 60% share of these guys, so that's who I'm kind of taking that rooting interest and kind of putting it towards, right?
It's totally into my fantasy players for sure. It's into my picks. I'm sure you guys experience it well. You go out on a limb picking a guy, and you want that guy to obviously have success, so you root for him. And I have the joy and the pain of working with some coworkers who root for me to fail from the standpoint of they like to pick on me, in all good fun. But since leaving college, I've now regained my fandom for the Gators because I don't have to worry about that from a job perspective. So I live and die with the Florida sports team.
And I'm sure you're going to be talking about Kyle Pitts all off season. So last thing before we kind of get started in here, I know during the season it's incredibly busy for you. You guys are pumping out pods every single day. You go on HQ. Is things slowed down a little bit for you since the season ended, or are you still full grinding every day doing stuff?
So HQ, we do it's our 24-hour streaming network, and we do our Fantasy Football Today show every day at noon during the season, and then at Sunday it's our pregame show. It's 10 to 1. That stops completely. I still do hits for HQ because we just don't do a fantasy show because there's no real need. So they use me as an NFL analyst. I do DFS plays during the weekend for the playoff games. But our podcast keeps going. We've still been 3 days a week. I think you guys are obviously well aware of what the podcast audience is and how much people consume it. So we try to feed that consumption as best we can. Our host Adam Mazer is amazing. My colleagues Dave Richard, Heath Cummings, Chris Towers are fantastic. So it's fun to still talk football with them even though the season's over.
Yeah, we've had Adam Mazer on our baseball show a little while back, and Chris is actually coming on next week for baseball. CBS crew is by far the best. I love listening to you guys, and you guys are always great coming on the shows. But we have the right guy here for what we're going to be talking about today in Jamey Eisenberg, because today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about fantasy football's most wanted. So my question to you guys, have you seen these men? People are having trouble finding these guys. We last saw these players at the end of their team's current seasons. However, many may not be back in their current homes. Question is, where can we find them? Where will they be in the fantasy landscape? Not only have we have their pictures posted on milk cartons, posters, and social media, but we've got 3 cops here to do the job to help get these on track and get these guys tracked down. So, cops, these 5 men I'm about to ask you, I need you to tell me, where can we expect them to be next season? And we are going to start off with our first guy here, and that's Deshaun Watson. Have you seen this man? He's been seen photoshopped on jerseys from over half the NFL. After requesting a trade, he's the apple of many an eye. Last seen in the Houston area, where I think he's currently under contract. So, Jamey, where is Deshaun Watson? Where can we find him in 2021?
To be honest, I hope he stays where he is. I think we saw what he's capable of. Obviously there was a lot of concern about losing DeAndre Hopkins and what would he become? How would he perform? How dependent was he on one of the best receivers in the game? And I think he showed you how good he could be. With Will Fuller, without Will Fuller, he was the centerpiece of this offense. I thought he could be an MVP candidate going into the season. So it's hard to say that he's going to be significantly better anywhere else. So if you're asking me where I'd like to see him play, it would probably be Houston. Where's he going to play? The Jets seem to be the most logical choice based on the compensation they have to offer, his interest, if you're following the reports. And, it wouldn't be a bad situation from an offensive line that's building. I hope a good offensive coordinator and Matt LaFleur's younger brother and Mike LaFleur. They got to add some weapons clearly, but if I had my choice, I'd like to see him stay in Houston and bring back Will Fuller for another run.
And that's how his fandom of the Dolphins is gone, because he did not once say Tua and 2 first-rounders for Deshaun.
That's true. Johnny, what about you? Where do you think he's going?
I wanted to go to the Dolphins. I think it would be fun. Tua, obviously, I think there's a lot there for him, but he's like a work in progress, and the Dolphins look like they are a stud quarterback away from being actual contenders with that defense. So that would be fun.
Jamey, do you think that Tua can get there just from what you've seen a little of him, or you think it's still too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell. It's kind of unfair, I think, that he's being compared to, and understandably so, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow for what those guys were, because they were the three guys that were drafted in the top 10, and obviously the spotlight was on all three of them. Tua's coming off a hip injury. He was going into a situation with, none of these guys had off seasons, but clearly the other two guys didn't need it. His weapons were the worst of those other guys. I mean, Herbert inherits Keenan Allen, who's one of the best receivers in the game. They give Joe Burrow T. Higgins. He has Tyler Boyd. He has A.J. Green for what it's worth. Devontae Parker is in the mix with those guys, clearly, but Preston Williams gets hurt. Mike Gesicki didn't, necessarily mesh well with them. Chan Gailey's, 100 years old. So I think a full offseason will help him. It's too soon, I think, to write him off, but I think Johnny's got a point. If the Dolphins are able to make that happen, then you have a offensive line that's right there. Hopefully they can add a piece or two, and you got to assume that it's certainly going to happen with the Jets, because everybody loves Robert Saleh. So they're gonna draw people. The Dolphins, I think, will draw people because I think people respect Brian Flores. State tax matters, weather matters, so all those things will come into play. But wherever Watson goes, if those are the two main options, which it seems to be, he's gonna bring some people with him. Maybe it's an Allen Robinson, maybe it's a smaller scale guy like a T.Y. Hilton, but there'll be guys that will follow that will help his receiving core, and I think he'll be a very good fantasy option in one of those spots.
And who knows, maybe ex-Raider great Lynn Bowden Jr. turns into a stud.
Maybe so.
Offensive weapon.
Doc, let's go to the ugliest person in the room here with those shades. But go ahead, and who's your thoughts for Deshaun Watson?
Sorry, I was getting into character. I'll stop acting if you want me to.
Go ahead.
So I think Deshaun Watson is out of Houston. I think when J.J. Watt made those comments of, sorry, we wasted one of your years, they were 4-12. They weren't close to competing. And despite losing DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson did lead the league in passing yards. I think since he has the no trade clause, he's going to decide where he wants to go. And I think Miami is the best destination. I think offensively, they're better suited than the Jets. Robert Saleh is a defensive-minded coordinator coming from my team, the 49ers. I think Jamey hit the nail on the head when Brian Flores is respected. And if you're the Dolphins, you can give up Tua, who wasn't your closer, as Brian Flores would say, and you're giving up 2 first-rounders that you got in the Laramie Tunsil trade. So it's essentially you're doing another trade for Houston and getting Deshaun Watson for Laramie Tunsil and some picks. So I think that's where he should decide to waive his no-trade clause.
All right, so a lot of Miami love. Let's go to the next one here. And I have a question. Have you seen this warrior? He fights through broken bones, muscle tears, and losing environments. He's finally set free from the NFC North basement and is out in the world somewhere that's not Detroit. So my question to you guys, where is Matthew Stafford, Jamey Eisenberg?
I think there's 2 things for me here. There's fantasy and reality. I think fantasy, I'd like to see him. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but Denver. I like the setup of the receiving core there. When you factor in Noah Fant and obviously Jerry Jeudy and hopefully a healthy Courtland Sutton, they go 4 deep, when you throw in KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick. So there's a lot to like about those weapons. I think, Garrett Bowles and what they have on the offensive line is good. I think that's a system that would fit him. But reality-wise, the Colts seem to be the team that's most likely as the destination for him. An offensive line that's great. Some cap to, hopefully get some help with the receiving core, whether it's, again, bringing back a T.Y. Hilton or adding to it. Michael Pittman, they'll use the tight ends, whoever of the trio that is still there. Great run game as well. So I think it'll be a good fantasy option there, but I don't think that maximizes his potential. For me, actually my 2 favorite landing spots fantasy-wise would be Denver and New Orleans. If New Orleans could find a way to make that work as well. But it seems as if Indianapolis is probably the most likely landing spot for him.
Which I thought was kind of interesting because everybody was talking about how it was just going to be a matter of time before Wentz and Frank Reich got back together. And now it's kind of being pushed down a little bit more with the Stafford love. Because I saw, photoshops of Stafford. I've seen that been floating around Twitter a lot. So it is an interesting thought, all those teams. Doc, did any of the ones that Jamey brought up kind of intrigue you for where you think he's going?
I didn't even think about the Broncos at first, but it would totally be a John Elway move to trade for a quarterback who 32, not entirely old, but doesn't have that durability, maybe not durability, but the super long career that you'd be looking for. For me, I think the 49ers are going to make a trade for him. He is they are 1 year removed from the Super Bowl. I think Jimmy Garoppolo's best days are behind him, and it's easy to say as a Niners fan. They lost a lot of people to injury. They have a higher first-round pick this year, so I could see them taking an impact player. And really still thinking that Super Bowl window is open. They have Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. They have Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert under contract next year. And I think Stafford would be the best quarterback that Shanahan has had in his time with San Francisco, and I see him wanting to pull the trigger.
Jamey, do you think that the Lions are only going to trade him to the AFC just because they don't want to have to face him? Is that something that you think is a real factor here?
I don't think so. You have a new regime coming in, so I don't know, how much they're going to stick to. We have to, avoid. You're not going to see him go to the NFC North. Let's just say, for whatever reason, the Packers had moved on or still move on, from Aaron Rodgers, but it doesn't seem like that's likely. They wouldn't trade him to the Packers. I don't see them trading him to the Vikings or the Bears, if that's a potential situation. But I think at this point, you look at it as they want to do right by Stafford, based on what you're hearing. So they obviously want to get the best compensation. I'll ask you guys this because it's something we've talked about a lot. What do you think it takes to get Matthew Stafford? Because I don't think, as you alluded to, Doc, he's 32 years old. He's beaten up. For me, it's a second-round pick. I don't see a first-round necessarily compensation having to go back to Detroit for them to move on from the contract and obviously make something work here to get it done. I've said 2 in a conditional, so could be a 6 that becomes a 4 if he makes a Pro Bowl, if they go to the Super Bowl, how those things work. So for me, that's what it is. I'm curious what you guys think the trade value is for Matthew Stafford.
Johnny, you want to go ahead and answer first?
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see the second round. I just, from my heart, I couldn't trade a starting quarterback for less than a first because that's sort of where you want to get your next starting quarterback. But for the record, I didn't think about Denver either, and my fandom for the Raiders is still functional. So I would hate to see Stafford, Herbert, and the gimmick artist Mahomes 6 times in a season.
You're not spreading your Mahomes hate to our guest here, so I will not tolerate that. Doc, if you want to answer, and then I'll give my thoughts.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking a second and a third. I think anytime that a first is attached, that just the value of the first, you have to be trading for an elite player that's on a good contract. Stafford's cap hit is about $27 million a year, so you have to factor that in as well. The team is going to have to absorb that big contract. But I think a team is only going to trade for him if they're in a win now mode. So that might limit the amount of suitors that the Lions could get, and maybe that price goes down even more.
So just the only quick thought I have on it is I think Adam Schefter was the one who reported that there's numerous teams that have already lined up trying to talk. So I think if there's that many teams that Schefter's talking about, it's going to be a bidding war. And I think ultimately might be a first round pick that gets it done. Maybe it's a back end first round pick or something, or a team like New England comes in there, a team that was coming off a mediocre season. It's not going to be a top 10 pick, but I think ultimately with all those teams going against each other to try to get him, that they might be able to get a first round pick out of it. Just my thoughts. Let's move to the next guy here, though. And have you seen this guy? He was flying high as the number 3 overall pick not too long ago. And the peeps with his rights already seem tired of him. Maybe it's the bright lights. Maybe he's a warm weather guy. He did come from Southern Cal. My question is, where is Sam Darnold Darnold playing next year, Jamey?
A lot of people might make that comparison, Sam Darnold, Sam Bradford. It seemed like San Francisco made some sense when you saw where the draft was kind of playing out, and they were looking like the 1 or the 2 based on some potential fit for San Francisco. But I think the more you start to see it, one wouldn't shock me if he's still back with the Jets. If in fact they feel like they can make him work on a 1-year situation and spend their draft compensation elsewhere. Not necessarily taking a quarterback with a second overall pick. But if they do get Deshaun Watson, do decide to take a rookie, I think Washington makes some sense. You're looking at a team that lost out on what they thought was going to be their franchise quarterback. Dwayne Haskins not working out. Darnold could come in, whether it's in tandem with Alex Smith. Smith assumes the backup role. Smith takes the mentorship role. I think Washington's going to be in the market for a quarterback that still has some upside. And I think Darnold, if he's is able to be acquired cheaply, which I think it will be the case, knowing that the Jets have all the leverage here. I can see Washington as the next destination for Sam Darnold in 2021.
I would love that. I feel like that he hasn't gotten the right chance playing with Adam Gase his whole career. having no receivers. Jamison Crowder being his number one, I don't think he's a legit number one receiver. I would love to see him in an offense better suited for him, with a coach that actually knows how to coach and with actual weapons. So I like that call with Washington. Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas there. Love that call. Johnny, what about you? What are you thinking?
I think maybe the Bears, I think, would be funny. They trade one disappointing quarterback out for another one, but the coaching has to be better than Adam Gase, like you alluded to. So maybe they really think they have something there and they can turn him around.
Doc, what about you?
I think he stays with the Jets. We looked at Josh Rosen a couple of years ago. He was taken, I think, 10th. And then the next year, Cliff Kingsbury comes in. Everybody knows that they're going to select Kyler Murray number one, even though they try putting up a smokescreen. And you end up getting a third-round pick for him. And that looks really bad that you invested a top 10 pick on a quarterback, aren't even giving him a chance with a new head coach. I think he stays in New York for one more year. They try to build up his trade value a little bit more and then maybe get a second-round pick, because I don't think if you traded him now, you'd get that in return.
Do you
think?
think?
One thing about it, though, is if you just look at the track record of everybody that's left Adam Gase, he's going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
He is.
The sky's the limit right now.
That's true. I mean,
You should be his agent.
there you go. I want to be respectful of Jamey's time, so let's move to the next guy here. And have you seen this player? He doesn't play on fourth downs with the game on the line, apparently. And there's a new hot shot in town that does the same job he does. It's been said he's unsure of his future and could be seen hitchhiking to another city. So, Jamey, where will we find Aaron Rodgers in 2021?
Yeah, I think the now that the dust has settled on the game, you saw some of the comments today on Tuesday that he's most likely back in Green Bay. I think at this point, he's probably surveying the landscape and saying, I could be successful here, I could be successful there. But he's gone to back-to-back NFC Championship games, and while they have struggled in those games, clearly, I think it makes too much sense for him to stay in Green Bay another year. Jordan Love's not ready to play. I mean, the Packers aren't stupid. You heard their general manager come out and say, we're not idiots. We're not getting rid of Aaron Rodgers. So it'd be shocking at this point. I think San Francisco would probably be the destination for him, to go back to California to, maybe take on what could have been his career, had the 49ers made the right choice as opposed to taking Alex Smith. Not that you can fault them at the time for what Alex Smith was, but you can certainly fault them now knowing that Aaron Rodgers is potentially on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in NFL history. That's the only team really I could see him leaving for if that's where he wants to go, but I'd be surprised if he's anywhere other than Green Bay.
Doc, do you echo the same sentiments as well?
I don't think he comes back to Green Bay. I think he maybe forces his hand into retirement. He did hint that he is hosting Jeopardy in the offseason. So he called his future a beautiful mystery. And I think that's being as cloudy as possible without speculation. I would love for him to go to the 49ers, and if that's where he decided to waive his no trade clause. But I could actually see him in a New Orleans Saints uniform. And I think the Saints would have to trade someone like Jameis Winston, who could be your bridge starter, some picks, and then they are over the salary cap, so they might have to trade some talent as well. I'm not saying they're trading Michael Thomas, but maybe there is some deal in place where they get rid of some players that have some value that are making a decent amount of money so they can get under the cap, but still kind of be in this championship window.
That's a lot to unpack there. We don't have the time to unpack everything you just said between him retiring or going to the Saints. I don't think that's going to happen. Let's go to Johnny here. Give us your thoughts.
I thought he was going to stay because he doesn't seem like the person who will force the issue and force his way out. And I mean, there is precedent in Green Bay where younger quarterbacks sit for a few years instead of taking over the reins. But I really liked Eric's scenario with the New Orleans Saints. So I'm flip-flopping. And, he cut out his family, so maybe he cuts out the team that drafted him.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Let's move to the last guy here. And have you seen this Eagle scout? He says all the right things, but doesn't seem like the head scout he was a few years ago. With the scout leader ousted, who knows where this one will go? Which troop will we see Carson Wentz in next year, Jamey?
It seemed like Indianapolis was the most likely landing spot, obviously with the connection to Frank Reich and the need with Phillip Rivers gone. But Matthew Stafford, I think, is going to ruin that for Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. So I think the way that it unfolded for the Eagles with them firing, Doug Peterson, They sided with Carson Wentz, which is unfortunate because I like Jalen Hurts. I want to see Jalen Hurts more. I'd like to see him stay as the starting quarterback, and that may happen. You may see him win the job with a new regime, but it seems as if they're going to try and resurrect Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. So get used to that, Eagles fans, because I think he's staying, and I think he's going to be a starter again in 2021.
So my question then is, in today's day and age of NFL, you can force a trade whenever you want. Contracts don't matter. If you're Jalen Hurts and he's announced back as a backup, does he get uncomfortable and try to force his way out, do you think?
I don't think so. He's so cheap, and the longer you play out the Wentz contract, the cheaper it becomes. Next year it's a burden to trade him. They take too much of a cap hit, and there's too much dead money involved. So I think if they play it out for another season and they see if they can get Carson Wentz back on track, and then maybe his trade value in 2022 is a little bit better because the contract's easier to trade. But I don't see them moving on from Jalen Hurts because he's under control and makes too much sense to keep him based on the money.
Doc, what about you? What do you think for Carson Wentz?
Yeah, I think either he stays with the Eagles or that he goes to the Colts. I think those are the only two logical destinations. And I'm actually leaning towards the Colts because the Eagles have a lack of playmakers. I know they're going to cut Alshon Jeffrey. Zach Ertz looks like he's lost a step. And I think when you have receivers or tight ends that can't get separation, your best success is having a mobile quarterback. And we saw the Eagles, how rejuvenated they were. Their offense looked when they had Jalen Hurts play. And I think with Carson Wentz, this is probably the highest that his value will be because he did show that he was healthy for this entire season. Durability is not his strong suit. So I think they'll trade him to the Colts. It's a marriage, once again, between him and Frank Wright, and everybody's happy.
The only thing I'll push back on that is I think it's a little more Stafford, just because John Dorsey just got hired to help in the front office. And John Dorsey and Chris Ballard have a very close connection from being a Chiefs fan from their time in Kansas City together. And I think that I see them making a trade work rather than someone from Philadelphia making. I know Frank Wright is obviously a good guy to communicate with, but I think that Chris Ballard and John Dorsey connection make a lot more sense to me. I could see that actually going down more so than the Carson Wentz scenario. Johnny, finish this one out for us.
I think it's a little bit out of the box, but I think the New England Patriots make a trade for him. They have a ton of cap space, and Cam was not as explosive after he got COVID as he was right at the beginning of the season for like 2 whole games. And this is sort of uncharted territory for them, so we can't really base it on prior experience because they've literally had Tom Brady for 2 decades. So I think they actually make a splash here to try and recover to what they once were.
That's fair. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be very interesting just because I think Adam Schefter tweeted not too long ago, actually, that he said it looks like only 10 quarterbacks are firmly in place for next year. So we may see a quarterback carousel that we've never seen before. It's going to be wild.
Or everybody stays where they are.
That'd be kind of disappointing, but that was great discussion. Let's move now to our question of the week. And our question of the week is sponsored by Shady Rays. So what do you like to wear when it's sunny? When you're playing football, trying to catch a 50-yard bomb from Jamey Eisenberg? What about playing poker or even podcasting? That's right. You wear shades, but you're getting tired of getting ones that don't work or that don't make you look totally fabulous. Shady Rays is here to change the game, and they want you to have the best quality, most polarizing, and affordable shades that you can wear for any occasion. Whether your sunglasses break, get scratched, lost, broken by an errant throw, they'll replace that good old thing for you. For every order placed, Shady Rays donates 10 meals to Feeding America and have over 13 million donated meals to date. And if you like what you're hearing, use code TRIPLEPLAY at checkout and you get 25% off your order of shades, excluding the RX series. That's quite a deal. And if you have trouble hearing me, I'll repeat that a little louder. That's 25% off with the code TRIPLEPLAY. Don't throw shade. Instead, wear them and use Shady Rays. All right, so our question of the week this week, which player, you could have past or present, do you feel most comfortable and least comfortable if they were babysitting your kids? Jamey, you're the only one of us that has kids right now, so we're going to speak metaphorically, of course, because not quite there yet for us. Why don't you start it off from both sides, who you would and who you would not want to babysit?
So when you sent me the notes for the show, the first guy that popped in my head was Julian Edelman to watch my kids. And I know he's had some minor off-field issues, beating up a car in particular. But he wrote a kid's book called Flying High. It's about a squirrel. It's basically, a story about himself, but it's a kid's book. It's a cartoon. And for about 3 weeks, my kids asked to read it over and over and over and over again. So I think if he actually showed up and read the book himself, my kids would be thrilled. My oldest one has a Julian Edelman jersey. That's how much he liked Julian Edelman. So that was the one that came to mind in terms of watching my children. And the other side of that, I would actually let this person watch my children because I think he would toughen them up. But he's the scariest football player I've ever seen, and it's James Harrison. The thing that I like about it is, if you remember, there was a story about him talking about participation trophies. And I coach my kids in a lot of sports, and there's a few leagues that we do that they get participation trophies. Most of the leagues that they do, thankfully, they make you earn your trophies. You have to finish first or second to get some sort of reward. So I understand participation trophies and what they mean for kids, but I like the fact that there was actually an athlete that said, make kids earn their reward and earn their trophies. So I wouldn't mind if he toughened them up a little bit, but also, he's a scary individual. You see him, he's still getting commercials because he's such a scary dude, for what he did on the field. But I do think he's a good parent based on some of the things I've heard.
Hey, Jamey, so if your kids get a participation trophy, are you keeping it or are you throwing it away?
They have them. So there's I won't say the league because I think it's a national thing, but there's a league that they take part in when they start at 3. And they give them participation trophies. At that age, I'm fine with it because, kids like the shiny thing. But the ones that we display in their rooms and in the house are the ones that they've earned. So my kids have been fortunate enough. They mostly play baseball. So my older one has won two titles in T-ball. And his younger brother just won his first one. So those trophies are the ones that are on display as opposed to the participation trophies that they got for playing these sports year over year over year.
Those are 2 great choices. I think because I know these 2 and they're going to be going in a completely different direction. So I'm glad you started off the right way, Jamey. Johnny, I know where you're going. Please surprise me and tell me you're going to go somewhere else.
The players I feel most comfortable would be the players that have had the most kids, Phillip Rivers and Antonio Cromartie.
Oh my gosh, you stole my answer.
They have all the experience in that regard. And David, I'm going to go in an opposite direction. You really set yourself up here for a Tyreek Hill joke, who I at least want to watch my kids. I'm not going to touch it. It's too obvious. I'm going with Derek Carr because he fumbles it every time he's sacked. So is he going to drop my kid or something?
I like that curveball because you went from insulting my team to your team. So that's fine with me. Doc, do you have a backup or do you want to just echo the same thing?
I'm going to say Phillip Rivers because he also doesn't cuss. So my future kids won't learn those words and will say dadgummit instead, which I think is funny. And then for who I'm not allowing my kid to be supervised under is Adrian Peterson. We already know how he disciplines. So I don't think I'd want my kids disciplined with a switch.
Yeah, I mean, can't argue with those. I like that Jamey had a bright spin to turn on to it, though, because that's being positive. I like that more. But without hesitating anymore, let's go to our last segment, and that's our game of the week. And our game of the week, Jamey, we always do a different game every single week whenever we have a guest on. And for this week, we like to give you a little bit of Triple Play Fantasy's version of this or that, guaranteed to be the hardest questions you've ever had to answer. Are you game?
I'm game.
All right, so we've got 10 questions here. Just pick one of the choices that you have offered, starting with number 1. Who would be the worst to lose to in a fantasy championship? Dave Richard, Heath Cummings, or Adam Azer?
Oh, boy. I lost all 3 of them. So who was the worst to me? Probably Azer, simply because he likes to let you know when he wins things.
If I threw Will Brinson in that category, would that change it?
Oh, yeah. Will's the worst. I'm on a text chain with Will Brinson, Pete Prisco, and Nick Costas, who is a former colleague of ours. He works for Entercom Radio now, and it's one of the most painstaking text chains ever. But it makes me laugh every 5 minutes. But it's mostly because those guys just all talk. We all talk trash to each other, and Will would never let. Thankfully, I never lost to Will in a championship game, but Will never let me live it down. And Will is notorious for always showing up late to the mock drafts that we do. And so we're in a dynasty league together. My team name is Where's Will? It's a picture of his mugshot. And the funny thing about this is a 14-team league. Will gets text messages from other people in the league asking to make trades with my roster because they think it's him.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I'm not
It's a good
surprised.
football game.
That's awesome. Second question: the better Jesse Eisenberg movie, Social Network, Art of Defense, or Now You See Me?
Art of Defense is a very underrated one, but obviously got to go Social Network. He was nominated for Academy Award. It's a fantastic movie. Obviously, it's something that'll be relevant for many, many years to come because it's based on Mark Zuckerberg. Just an amazing film. Couldn't be more proud of him. But all three of those are very, very good. But the Art of Defense, most people don't know, so I appreciate you bringing that one up.
If Jesse Eisenberg is a gritty Michael Cera, would you consider yourself a more gritty Jesse Eisenberg?
I guess so, yeah.
John was proud of that one. Next question: would you rather clog the toilet at your wife's house on your guys' first date, or at CBS headquarters and everybody know it's you?
Oh boy. I guess I could say my wife's house, and she's married. She married me already. So, not that that's happened. Yeah, you'd rather have that be, a one-on-one conversation as opposed to everybody else knowing what you did.
Yeah, the CBS crew will never let you forget it.
No.
All right. Would you rather fulfill your biggest wish or resolve your biggest regret?
That's a good one. Probably fulfill my biggest wish because that could probably still resolve my biggest regret.
All right. I like that. Would you rather have finger-sized nipples or nipple-sized fingers?
Nipple-sized fingers, I guess.
So Matthew Berry was on last week, and he found a loophole in it. And he said if they were finger-sized nipples, they could be completely flat and no one could see them. Because I originally was saying that it would be like sticking out where it would be.
Only when it's cold, David.
Yeah. So, but no, I like that answer. What about this next one? Eat the same meal every day for the rest of your life or never use Twitter again?
Oh, I'll never use Twitter again.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was the easiest one so far. Pop-Tarts or toaster strudels?
Pop-Tarts.
Which flavor?
I haven't had a Pop-Tart. I went, which was part of the reason, I feel like I've gotten out of shape. I went through a phase where I ate Pop-Tarts. You want to talk about eating the same meal every day? I probably ate Pop-Tarts like 4 times a week. And it was I guess it was a strawberry. I don't really recall. We were in our vending machine at CBS. It was just, we just had, I think, our first kid, and it was always, get him out of the house or get him, where he had to go. And I just didn't eat anything. So it was just like a force of habit. Like you get into, I'm sure you guys probably get into routines during football season. It was just like a routine. So the mere mention of Pop-Tarts just sent shivers down my spine.
I'm surprised you didn't pick toaster strudels then, just because of last two here. Would you rather wear underwear one size too small or shoes 2 sizes too big?
Shoes 2 sizes too big.
Right,
you want to be uncomfortable there.
That very good point. Last one. This is the most important one. All right. Have a sleepover with Dan Marino, who, like I said, I know you said earlier he's your idol, and you get to ask him everything you want for one night. Do whatever you want with the sleepover. But for that 1 year, I become
Why
your.
does it have to be a sleepover, not like a dinner? Or something?
I figured. I mean, dinner's only like an hour or two. Sleepover, you can stay up all night talking. Like, why would you rather not have the sleepover?
I'm mad you didn't say slumber party.
But for that same year, I become your new intern, and you have to see my face, interact with me every day. And I'm assuming after the nipple question, that's a scary thought. So, would you do it?
So it's either sleepover with Dan Marino or you're my intern every day?
Well, no, you get to have that sleepover with Dan Marino and I become your intern. Or if you say no to Dan Marino, then I don't have to become your intern.
Oh, I mean, I would take you as more than an intern. I mean, I think, you probably do a great job based on how you're hosting the show here. So, but I've had the pleasure of not sleeping over with Dan Marino. Quick side note, the first few years of our show, Fantasy Football Today, we used to film it in New York. And Dave and I would alternate every week. We'd fly up every week. We would watch games with the CBS Today, the NFL Today crew. One of the highlights of my life was sitting in the same room. I mean, you want to talk about being a fly on the wall with Shannon Sharp and Boomer Esiason and Dan Marino and just listening to them talk about games. It was just a wall of TVs, and they would sit there and they would, look at this, look at this, look at this. And I'll never forget, at this point, I got a chance to know Dan a little bit from, just being around South Florida media and being obviously in the opportunity to watch games with him. And so it was the year that Cam Newton set his rookie season, when he set the rushing record for most touchdowns. And I looked at Dan, I'm sitting next to him, I go, Dan, how many rushing touchdowns did you have? And he leans back in his chair and he goes, do you think I care? And I was like, yeah, I think you probably don't.
Oh my God, that's great. I don't remember ever hearing that story. That's awesome.
Yep.
Oh
yeah,
man.
So you're hired. You will come work for us at CBS. You're more than welcome.
David was just fishing for compliments on that one.
David's updating his resume right after this show.
Well, I don't want to hold Jamey any longer. Jamey, really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to talk to you tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It's fun. Like I said, hopefully we get a chance to do it again, and happily invite you guys on our show as well.
I would love that, Jamey. And before you head out of here, just can you let our listeners know, in case they live under a rock, where they can find you, the stuff that you're working on, any secret projects you want to plug or anything like that?
Yeah, just check us out, CBS Sports, our podcast, wherever podcasts are found. It's Fantasy Football Today. You can check out CBS Sports HQ. We'll have CBS Super Bowl, so we have a ton of coverage coming up over the next 10 days or so. I will actually be in Tampa starting next Monday, so it's always a highlight of my life. This will be the 6th Super Bowl that I've covered, and it's more and more fun every time. This is a unique one, obviously, with the circumstances around the world, but hopefully we'll make it work. And check us out, cbssports.com, CBS Sports HQ, and again, wherever podcasts are available.
Best podcast in the game, and that's no question. Honestly, again, you learn so much, and they're such great guys. So make sure you check out the podcast. Also check out Jamey as well. Great follow and a great guy in the fantasy sports community for sure. Everybody listening, thank you so much for listening, watching. We hope you enjoy the Pro Bowl if you decide to watch that. Hopefully hit a fun bet or two. We'll catch you guys next week. See you guys soon.